Hello, my name is Alejandro Cornejo. I'm a leadership and personal development specialist. And in today's Learning Series episode, we're going to cover procrastination, what it is, some of the root causes of it, and some of the things that you can do to mitigate it. Now, as human beings, we all procrastinate. And in the era or the time that we currently live in, I would say it's almost mandatory because you have so many things that are coming your way that you need to decide on what you will take action on and what needs to be deferred. Now, one thing that I want to make clear and that I feel is important is that procrastination is not a character trait. A lot of times we tend to think that those who procrastinate are just lazy. Maybe that's the story you've been telling yourself. But the way that we want to look at it is more or less that it's a coping mechanism for the stress that's associated with either something that's boring or something that feels overwhelming. In his book, The Now Habit, procrastination expert Neil Fiore has a statement that I really like. And he indicates that to overcome procrastination, it's best if we accept a positive attitude about the human spirit. As human beings, we naturally gravitate to meaningful work. And if you look at areas in your life, there are things that you do, whether leisure activities or work, that you jump right into and get done without procrastinating. We don't procrastinate 24 hours a day. So hopefully, understanding that you have motivation to get things done can shift the way that you begin to look at procrastination. Now let's talk about the root causes or the source of procrastination. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of people who procrastinate are actually very good employees. They're good leaders, they're entrepreneurs, they're successful people. So why do they procrastinate, or why are they susceptible to procrastination? Well, I would suggest to you that it's the fear of failure. And you're wondering, wait a second, fear of failure? Many of us, when we undertake a project, begin to think of everything that it will take for this project to be very good or to have a successful outcome. So in that process, you can begin to think about everything that can go wrong. And because we have such a high standard, or what I would even sometimes say perfectionism, that unconsciously affects our ability to start. I would also add that when we associate our work or things that we do, our art, anything that we create with our self-worth, it can be a little dangerous, because if that creation, if that work is not received well, we think it's a personal attack on us. And again, our unconscious or subconscious thinking can really drive the way that we behave, our actions, etc., and therefore influence our ability to get things done. So a key component is having a growth mindset, in understanding that we learn from failures, or we learn when things don't necessarily go right 100%, because then we can adapt, we can learn, and we can keep trying different things. And understanding that our ideas, our work is not a reflection of our self-worth. In addition to that, we tend to do things or think about work, projects, etc., as things that we need to or have to do. So another component is freeing yourself of the need to do anything. Maybe repeat after me or listen to what I have to say. You don't have to do anything. I'm going to say it one more time. You don't have to do anything. It's a choice that you make to create, to work, to produce. So if we take this position, we put ourselves in a position to leverage what is called intrinsic motivation, or motivation that comes from within. It's better than being driven by outside forces or circumstances. And when it comes to a project, activity, something that you're wanting to do or to create, if you find yourself procrastinating, maybe a good question to ask yourself is, why? Why am I doing this? What's the purpose for this? One of the most important preconditions for successful change is a deep commitment to that change. Again, it's a fundamental choice and the value that we get from pursuing what we say we're going to pursue. So outlining what that is, why, and the purpose of it can certainly motivate you and help you to begin to take action. So hopefully you've identified the why and the purpose that you're doing something. But guess what? As human beings, we still have weaknesses that in the moment prevent us from moving forward and attaining our goals. So the first thing we'll talk about is understanding that our minds will always seek the path of least resistance, and we are easily deceived by our minds at any given moment. A key concept to understand is that when we focus on our current situation and our feelings, sometimes we erroneously predict how we will feel later. So the natural tendency many times for us is to stay put and not take action with the idea or the suggestion that I'll do that later or I'll do it tomorrow. The truth is that we're not very good at predicting how we will feel in the future. And as a result, when that time gets there, we fail to follow up on our commitments. So the trick is to find something that you can get started on, something very simple. I think many times when we feel overwhelmed, it's not because we have too much to do. But many times I would propose to you is that we don't know exactly what to do next. Our brain, when it gets too much information, goes to a paralysis of analysis. And as a result, again, it will take the path of least resistance, something that's easier to do. So a good way to do this is to ask yourself, what is the next action? Now, as a big fan of David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done, I usually suggest using the natural planning model, which we've begun to discuss here, which is starting with your why and the purpose of why you're doing something. Then after that, you get a vision. You can actually visualize what that successful outcome will look like. Again, these things help to motivate you to take that action. And when those moments when you're thinking that I'll do it tomorrow or you don't feel like it, hopefully those things can energize you to begin. The third piece is to brainstorm the ideas to make that happen. And we do this all the time. If we want to buy a new television, or if we want to see a football game at a friend's house, whatever it is, we start having ideas. First of all, we have a vision of what that's like, and we have ideas as to how we could do it. After you brainstorm, then you organize those ideas into certain priorities or milestones that you want to accomplish. And then you take a next action. Many times what holds us back from taking action is thinking that we have to start in a certain place. Or maybe we have too many things going on that we can't figure out where to start. But a next action is something that is easy and that is doable and that tricks your brain into taking action. Many times, for example, if you're going to get an oil change in your car, sometimes we'll skip a next action and just go to get oil change. That'll be our action or to-do list. But in reality, what is the first thing that you need to do? Maybe you don't even know where you're going to get an oil change. So the first action or the next action could simply be get on the internet and look for nearby places that do oil changes. Once you identify a next action that your brain feels it can handle, I think all of us can get online and just look for places that do oil changes. Once your brain can get a hold of that and take action on it, a next action will then appear. Once you find one, a next action could be call and maybe ask when you can take the car in, how long does it take? And when you do that, it'll lead to another next action. Again, the key sometimes is a very little thing that needs to get done. But sometimes in our thinking, we think that it's got to be something very grandiose, something very big. But the more that we break things down into little small actions that we believe we can do, it can set us up for success. Now, a key to all of this is ensuring that you're externalizing or dumping all of these things out of your mind. The next actions should be written down. I also believe your why, the purpose why you're doing something, the brainstorming, the ideas that you have, you need to get those out of your head so that it gives you availability or RAM, I would say, psychic RAM, to process what you're doing. If you don't, these things will be open loops that will remind you of things at the inappropriate times. Now, when you write a next action, you want to make sure that you're using action verbs. Action verbs create a signal to your mind that this is something that you need to do. If you say write draft of the proposal, again, these become things that you can actually do, and it's not something that is very unclear. If you just write oil change on a list, again, that will sometimes overwhelm your brain into not taking action. Now, another component that we can add to the next actions is to contextualize them, meaning that you organize them into specific contexts, like calls or errands or things that you do at home or things that you do in the office, things that you do online. When you do that, then you can leverage the opportunities when you find yourself in those situations. Now, we can go a little bit further and talk about implementation intentions. And again, when we think about context, what an implementation intention does is you allow yourself to plan that future of when, where, and how you're going to do that thing. So for example, if I was shooting this video, I could say that Monday in the afternoon, so now we know when, in the afternoon, where, in the resource room, after lunch, I'm going to shoot the first part of the video or 5 minutes of the video. Just by creating that context, when, where, and how, it increases my ability to follow through by more than 40%. You can look up implementation intentions on Google and see the power of this. If you remember something today from this session, understand that next actions with an implementation intention or context can change your life. Now, a final component that you can add to implementation intentions are what are called if-then scripts. If-then scripts. And these help you in the moment that you're taking the action. For example, maybe you're studying for a presentation that you have in a couple of weeks, and you set out when, where, and how you're going to do it. So at that moment, maybe you're doing it and you get a phone call from someone, or maybe you think about something else that you want to do. The if-then script will work by stating, if I'm studying for my presentation and I'm distracted by a call or by some other thought, then I will continue to study for another 20 minutes, whatever it is. It's always a contingency to what's going to happen. Maybe it's a diet. If I've eaten 1,500 calories for the day, then I will drink water. These planning tools are critical because they create the awareness in your brain and in your mind to respond at the moment that you're going to be doing these things. We know from habit formation that our behavior is highly influenced by certain triggers or cues. So the if-then scripts, the implementation intentions, and the next actions prime our brains to follow through on previous decisions. In essence, you're allowing yourself or deciding in advance to do what you said you were going to do. Now, the last piece that I want to share with you is the importance of balance, or what I would say rewards. Many times in our minds, our thinking, and we talked about it earlier, is that maybe we feel like we're workaholics, that we never have some fun. And again, the stories that our mind tells ourselves a lot of times is that of a victim. Oh, we're working all the time. Why can't we have some fun? So the key is to ensure that you build in reward activities after work that you do. You want to have a balanced life. It's not good to be working all of the time. Our brains actually cannot process information or come up with insights unless they have breaks. Many times when you find yourself doing something and feeling guilty about it, it's probably maybe because you haven't done the work that you know that could have been done at an earlier time. So when you have other activities or when you plan rewards around the work that you have to do, it gives you the freedom, again, to choose the action knowing that there is a reward coming. An important point to consider is that as human beings, when we think about distant or indefinite rewards, for example, the prospect of obtaining a job after 4 years or 5 years of hard study and work, that's not as motivating as something that is short term. Maybe even going out to a party or hanging out with some friends or going out to a dinner tomorrow. That is more likely to occur because we're more motivated by it. So using that formula, what we want to do is build in some of those rewards and activities as part of the work that we need to get done. So as we wrap up, I'd like to summarize on some of the points that we covered today. First of all is understanding that procrastination is a coping mechanism to avoid something that is overwhelming or something that we find maybe boring at the time. But if we're able to connect with the reasons why we're doing it or the purpose of that thing, that can certainly give us the ability to move forward. If we understand that as human beings, we are motivated. We're already motivated. We do a lot of things throughout our day and throughout our lives that are good and positive and productive. So we need to tap into that positive mindset of our ability to produce. Leveraging next actions and making them clear and putting them in a context so that they become doable. as opposed to some amorphous blob of information. If we simplify things into subtasks and contextualize them, it can certainly help us. Understanding that there are rewards, or that we can arrange our time and schedule so that there is reward for the work, so that we're not working all the time. And understanding the power that implementation intentions can have in our lives can certainly transform our world, it can transform our communities, and lastly, it's a transformation of yourself. If you have more questions or want some coaching, feel free to reach out to me. My information is here below. You can also, I would recommend, take a course called Transform Your Procrastination. It's created by a friend of mine. It's an online course. You can go to transformyourworld.us to find more information. So thank you for your time, and I want to commend you for investing in your development, and we'll see you next time.